All right, so let's design our first synth sound for this project. And if you want a really good reference point for the types of sounds to go for, I highly recommend listening to the Computer Data song that we already listened to a couple of times in the Lo-Fi House playlist. It's called Healing. And there's a couple other ones by Computer Data as well, which I feel like do a really good job of showcasing what we're going to be going for and also showcasing the types of chord progressions you want to be going for. Now, my advice is to just try to almost appeal to simple emotions with simple chord progressions. You don't need to do anything overly complex. And that's one thing I really like about this genre is it's like the essentials, you know? So that's what we're going to do. Now, I pulled open our trusty synth here, and I just have like a really basic, it's just this electric piano preset here, so I can show you what the chord progression is that we're going to be using. So let's just take a listen. So really simple stuff, but you can hear that it's got kind of that yearning quality to it, which I really like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize this preset and we're going to build something pretty cool from scratch here. So the first thing I'm going to do, and the first thing I almost always do and think about when I'm designing a new patch, is what type of waveform do we want to go for. Now in this case, I'm going to actually use the saw, I think it's the Juno saw here. So let's just let's take this down a little bit and take a listen to what this is sounding like. And you can hear too that there's only one note playing at a time, which means that we need to go down to the bottom left and make sure that monophonic mode isn't selected. And actually, while we're down here too, I kind of like to increase the number of voices of the polyphonic voices to a number around 16, maybe even higher, because what we're going to be doing is using a lot of detuned voices and stuff, and so that can kind of help us cover our base for how many voices we might need for a sound like this. So, so we took off monophonic mode, we got plenty of voices down here, so now let's take a listen. So obviously not very interesting right now, but what I want to first start with is just increasing this octave here. Yeah. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is increase the tuning. So I'm basically sharpening this particular oscillator by 12 cents, which is pretty significant. But what we're trying to do here is make it sound super kind of wobbly and warbly and detuned. And so the idea is that the next oscillator that we use, we're going to decrease the tuning by 12 cents. So it kind of has all this weird beating going on, which we'll hear in a second. Now, another really great way to get sort of an analog and gritty raw quality is to increase this drift amount. So every time we play a key, it's at a slightly sort of different tuning, which is basically what happens with analog equipment all the time, right? So it'll sound a bit like this. And so next, let's add in a square wave here, and we might as well stick to our Juno here. So if we head down to square, JU right here, we can add this in. And before we start, what you need to do is add in at least one voice so we can actually hear what's going on, and then also increase the volume as well. Okay, so we're increasing the volume just like this. And as we said, let's decrease the fine amount. I'm going to go to the same but opposite amount, or in the opposite direction as we did with the first synth, and also increase the drift as well. And also increase the octave so it's matching. I know it sounds kind of crazy right now, but it'll sound a little bit better in a second. Kind of has that like hyper saw quality to it almost. So yeah, this is sounding good. Now the next thing I'm going to add here is actually a bit of noise. So we want to make this a really noisy patch, and so what better way to do that than to add some analog noise? And I kind of like this Juno noise right here. So let's take a listen to what this sounds like. So it's, you know, it's adding quite a bit of noise, obviously, but that's exactly what we want. Now, the main thing I like to do when I'm adding noise like this is just to increase the high pass filter amount. Yeah. So it's going to be a significant part of the sound, but once we apply the filter, we can actually decrease, you know, how unpleasant it sounds at the moment. Okay. So once I achieve what I want to achieve with the oscillators, what I like to do next is just go to the amplitude envelope section, because that's going to have the next biggest effect on the sound, and it's going to get us closer to what we're after here. So let's just increase the attack a little bit here, and what we're trying to do with this synth is make kind of like a patch that will allow us to, like, it's going to slowly fade down to a lower volume, gently though. And so what that indicates to us is that we need to have a long decay. So let's increase this decay way up here. Okay, somewhere around here. And we could bring the sustain all the way down, but we don't necessarily want it to fade all the way out to basically nothing. Maybe we want to have it hang on a little bit here. So let's see what this sounds like. I also kind of like to increase the release time significantly, because it kind of provides a nice way of, like, just when you release the key, it bleeds into the next note, which I like the idea of for kind of a gentler chord progression like this. Cool. And so now the next thing is we have the amplitude envelope set up. What are we going to do with the filter? I'm actually going to keep this on the low pass 12. And what we're going to do is just lower this down. And the way that I like to approach this is to put the cutoff point where you want the synth to eventually end up, so that when you bring the filter envelope sustain down all the way, you always know exactly where it's going to go. Okay, so let's bring this down. Yeah, so maybe we'll start with something like that. And let's also increase the resonance a little bit here. Yeah. So obviously we don't want to have the cutoff just sitting there static. We want to add a little bit of movement and a little bit of interest. And so what I like to do is just add some envelope in there. And so if we just nudge this up a little bit here, it'll just throw a little envelope in there. I like to start at about 5% for something like as gentle as this. Now what we do is we go to the filter envelope section and we just tell it what we want it to do. So in this case, I want it to start kind of slow, and I want it to fade into the maximum point of where this envelope amount is directing the filter cutoff point to go. Okay, so let's start off a little slow, and then we're going to move it to about 300 milliseconds for the decay. And then for the sustain, we're going to bring this all the way down. Remember, this is exactly where the cutoff point is going to go. And then I kind of like to increase the release time a little bit here in the same way that we did with the amplitude envelope. So let's take a listen to this. So you can hear that that envelope is working pretty nicely. Let's bring the cutoff down a little bit more. Yeah. Another cool way that we could add some kind of analog quality to it is we could start messing around with an LFO in relation to the pitch of everything. So you can go to this LFO section right here, and I kind of like to do, like, if we set the LFO target to pitch fine all, and I like to bring this delay down real quick. And you can hear, if I bring this depth up, Obviously, we don't want it to sound like that. So we're just going to increase it a hair. Just a hair. And actually, while we mess around with the rate, I do bring the depth up a little bit just so we can hear it. Yeah, just a slow fade. So if we bring this down to like 1% maybe. Yeah. The other thing that I'm hearing too is I'd really like to take away some of the low mids, and I really like this EQ section that the synth has because it already has these bands all set up for you basically. So if we go to the EQ section, you can literally see where each one of these is. This is set to 200 hertz, and I'm just going to bring this down significantly. Yeah. And another thing I'm going to do is let's add in some effects and make it a little bit more spacey, because that's the type of vibe that we're going for here. So let's start with just some. Let's just insert some ping pong delay. This is some normal delay. We might want to mess around with that later. So let's add some ping pong delay here and see what this sounds like. Yeah. Maybe we could high pass it a little bit too, like the delayed signal anyway. We'll add some low pass here. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty cool. And the next thing, let's also add some plate verb in here as well. So we click over to plate and see what we can do. We'll high pass the plate. Maybe even low pass a little bit too to make it a little more subtle. Yeah, I think that's nice. It's very gentle and kind of spacey, so I think we've achieved what we're looking for so far. Now there are a few effects that I would like to add in here. So if we go to our effects chains, and let's go ahead and find our dirty swirly effects, which is what that's what I'm going to call this patch, dirty swirly. So I've got some EQ, some compression, and one other type of compression that I will show you exactly what this is doing. So what we're doing with this EQ is first, let me just bypass that little bit of EQ for a second. I'm just high passing a little bit to increase the clarity. And actually, now that I'm listening to this, let's actually go back and decrease the cutoff. Yeah, make it really dark. Something like this. So I'm just high passing it here, getting rid of some of this, yeah, super low end stuff. And I also, whenever I'm dealing with a synth like this, I always also like to think about what I could add to kind of make it stand out in the mix a little bit. And I really like to add in, you know, just kind of 1K. Yeah, somewhere around here. Kind of adding in this clarity, which is nice. And then also we've got a compressor on here. I really like using this glue compressor because it's kind of that SSL style of compression, and I'm a big fan. So what I've got is I've set it to about 10 milliseconds for the attack, and then about 200 milliseconds for the release. So, you know, not super fast on the release. And then the ratio is set to 2, so it's pretty gentle as far as compression goes. Just kind of touching it there. And lastly, what I'm doing is I'm adding in, this is one of my favorite plugins. Let me get rid of this one for a second. Now, this is one of my favorite plugins, and it's very simple. It's the waves compressor, but it's a type of band compression, or side chain compression. So what it's doing is you just tell it what you want it to apply the compression to, similar to like a multi-band compressor. But in this case, it's just a single one. So what I'm doing is I'm telling it, you can see that there's this low pass filter right here. And I'm telling it that I want it to apply the compression to everything below 540 hertz, so that it's just controlling that bottom end. So when I play this, you can see it's doing some work on the lower end. So if I press sidechain on the monitor section here, this is what it's controlling. And actually what we can do is maybe we even want to go even lower with this cutoff. Like what if we went down here? Yeah, something like this maybe. And this is kind of the main synth sound that we want to go for. So let's see what this sounds like in combination with the drums. And we'll actually collapse these drums and just double them up so we can get the full effect. Yeah, something like this. So this provides us with a nice, a really nice starting point for our chords, and we're going to continue to add on some more cool stuff on top of this.